We'll begin our meeting with our roll call, starting with Commissioner Brooks.
Here.
Commissioner Willis.
Here.
Commissioner Barr.
Here.
Commissioner Sims.
Here.
And the mayor is here. Commissioner Sims will lead us in our invocation and pledge.
If you'll bow with me. Our Heavenly Father, we just come to you. Father, we're so thankful for the community we get to live in with here. Father, you've blessed it so richly, and we just thank you for that. Father, we thank you for this commission and what it does and the time it puts in. Father, we just thank you for that volunteerism, and we thank you for our staff and all our employees, Father. They work so hard, and our citizens that support us so much, Father. Father, we just ask that you would give us wisdom today to understand the things that we need to approve and disapprove. Father, we just need that wisdom and understanding to do those things. Father, again, we thank you and praise you, Father, for all that you do and all you're going to do. And ask all these things in your Son's name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pat. All right. I don't believe we have any awards or proclamations today. And has everybody had a chance to review their minutes? Any questions or corrections to the minutes?
I'll make the motion to approve as presented.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the April 1st, 2025 regular city commission meeting minutes. Any, or all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Are there any attending citizens who have business they'd like to bring to the commission's attention that is not on our agenda? See anybody jumping up at the opportunity? We'll move on to our consent agenda. Item A is to consider the approval of the bills to be paid. Has everybody had a chance to review the bills?
Make the motion that we approve it.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We'll move on to our formal session. Item number 8 is to consider the approval of apartment master meter utility rate reconsideration.
It's just the handout that you all have from the county.
No.
No?
Mr.
Ronnie,
Oh, sorry.
I know what you're talking about.
Oh, okay, I'm further down, sorry.
Ronnie,
I brought some papers so y'all could maybe follow along with me what I'll
Okay.
be presenting today or talk to you about.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, sir. So today I'm coming before the commission to talk about a rate increase on utility bills, and what I'll be referring to is over at apartment complex I own. And I think that maybe the rate increase on these apartments got kind of swept into a bill that got passed that maybe with unintended consequences of what it's doing to residential multifamily apartments, which that's what I have. And it has a master meter, and I pay the utility bills, which the tenants pay me rent, and I consider the utility bills in the price of rent. So, I do take care of that, but they do pay the bills. So anyway, I appreciate y'all having me here today. So at my apartment's over on called the 11 Elm Apartments on East 520 East First. It's kind of low income property, and so each rate increase affects all of these people. And I think this rate on the water deals are going to affect them. But there's 4 single women that live there. 2 of them have 2 small children. There's 8 single men live there, 1 of which is a retired feedlot worker, so their incomes are low. And I have 1 family from Cuba that lives there, and they have 2 or 3 kids, which they're a great family. They take care of their place so well. And then I have 3 small families. And the highest rent over there is $750 a month, which includes all bills except for the electricity. So you see that the rates are not high. I'm not charging, I'm trying to be in the market value. I have bills to pay, and we'll make this work for them too. Lowest rent's $550 a month, which includes water, sewer, and trash into that too. They have to pay their own electric. So this rate increased my monthly expenses by $400, which is $4,800 a year. And I feel like that's a pretty high rate increase for the amount of tenants that live there. There's 16 people that have to bear this extra $400 a month. And I know the rate increase that the city enacted, is for commercial property. And a lot of commercial properties, like a business or a truck stop or whatever, they have hundreds or thousands of people to split this rate increase with. I split it with 16 people, $400 a month, which is, I think, a pretty heavy-duty rate increase for that amount of people. This is a residential property, and it may be classified as city code as a commercial property, but it's a residence. People live there. Their beds are there. They take baths there, wash their dishes. And when you ask them, where do you live? They say, I live here. I live in this residence. This is where I live. Just like me and you, we live in our house and we pay our water bill. This water rate that was changes the rates to the same thing that Jack's Car Wash pays. These are people that live in there and they take baths with this water. It ain't the same thing as Jack's Car Wash. Also, it's the same as a truck stop, where they have water. It's a different deal. They're commercial properties. They really are. There's many other true commercial businesses that are different than multi-family properties where people live and do their laundry and wash their dishes. There's many rental properties that are not being charged this rate. It's not it's not a fair rate based on how it's set up, because there's a lot of rent properties that are not going to get charged this extra money like my property is. And I feel this is an unfair tax burden for these residents, and I'm asking the council to eliminate or exclude this tax on residential multi-family properties. And that's what I come here for today, is to talk about that and see if we can figure something out and make a deal.
So since the last time Ronnie was here, have we done our research as far as master meters versus individual?
There was an accusation that we weren't charging other commercial property, and we checked on that. They are being charged the same commercial rate.
If they have a master meter. If they have a master meter.
Yes, one is, apartment complex that was brought up. All our customers are being charged that are classified as commercial, the commercial rate.
But the master meter's what's signaling to the city staff, this is commercial versus
Yeah,
residential.
Is, I guess, and I don't know if Javier's, that's what we discussed, and Melissa is that if they have a meter on the project, is they're classified, be it whatever meter, they're charged at that rate. So in other words, individuals that have considered commercial, that have a single family in there, they might have a residential meter on there simply because it's not a master meter of like an apartment complex, but they're charged the same as a commercial rate. Then, and the only way we know that is that they've declared that. Is we're not knocking on doors or this stuff. They have declared that it's rental property, and that's why the commercial rate, be it whatever meter or master meter, that's why it's applied to that property. And that's the only way we know, is if they declared that this is, and you know, when they sign up, you know, this is a rental property. That's how, when somebody comes in, they tell us whether it's rental or it's their home. And by a rental, that comes as classified as commercial. And that's pretty much across the country, is once you rent or take money and you don't live in, then it becomes commercial property. So that's based on, like I said, that's the only way we know whether it's commercial or not, is when they sign up the account, is they tell us they're renting it.
So that saying that rental like a house on Bennett that's being rented is being charged a commercial rate?
Yes.
To the renter or to the
Yeah,
person
they
that's living
have
there?
that option. Some landlords put, and that's how we know, some landlords actually put the water in the renter's name.
Are they charged commercial at that point?
Huh?
Are they charged commercial at that point?
Yes, yes.
So if the
Because-
renter is paying the water bill, they're charged a commercial rate?
A renter to go into a property, we have to have
Someone-
something.
Who's over utilities that can answer that question?
I can, like a house on Bennett?
If
A
it's a
rent
rental-
house, not an
This is
apartment.
different
No,
than,
if, the only time that they're charged a commercial rate is if there are several properties on one master meter.
So it's the difference of a master meter versus
If you
individual
have your own meter,
meters.
you're a residential customer. If you are set on a master meter, then that puts you in the commercial.
Commercial rate.
Okay.
Because there's several, it's a business at that point. You don't have your own personal meter. There are duplexes that have master meters with several other duplexes.
If
Those are commercial.
if this apartment complex wanted to break it out and have 16 meters for each of their tenants, then they would be under residential rate. But
How many apartment complexes do we have like that in the city, do you know?
I don't have a specific number that's, I don't,
So if I have a
there's
rental
this gentleman's and then
Only
the
apartments.
Jasmine Apartments on First Street has them, cause they also brought it up at one point, and then there's a couple over here on Porter, that are like duplexes.
What on
he's got a
North
master
8th
meter,
Street? What's that one?
provides water to multiple.
The newest one way out here on North 8th?
Elm and Oak.
They have a master meter?
I'm not 100% sure, sir. I could look into it, but I'm not sure.
I mean, the way I feel, I think this is definitely an unintended consequence of what we initially thought, or at least I'm speaking for myself. But on the flip side, we don't know, and I'm not saying, Ronnie, that you're doing this, but we don't know if it's another apartment complex out here that their bill's XYZ, and then they're tacking on another $20 a month to the consumer, the end user, then that wouldn't be right either, and we have zero control over that. So that,
Right.
that's the sticky part. So if somebody else comes along and says, well, like if we were to switch his, well then the next group comes in,
The reserve
but yet they're
also-
making $20 off of the water on the backside.
Right. If they've already passed it on.
And there's never gonna be a way to figure that out, because you can't break it down per unit, how much is being used.
No.
And so they're
It's
charging,
prorated out.
they're
per-
charging a rental fee, and they can say, no, that wasn't me charging on top of utilities, that's just my per square foot fee or whatever. And so, to me, our goal was never to hit people's houses, right?
Their living quarters.
Their living quarters, that was never our goal. Now, whether or not landlords are 100% ethical in the way that they charge rent, I don't know that we have the ability or the desire to try to figure that out.
No, and I don't think we can say it's right or wrong if somebody wants to make another $20 on
Yeah.
the flip side. I mean, not our job.
But I get what you're saying. I mean, the question I have is, do we have a way in our billing software where we can identify the difference between Jack's Car Wash and an apartment complex?
We can check.
You can make.
I think we
a
can.
billing group,
Like, can we go off of zones? Because Jack's Car Wash is zoned different than a multifamily dwelling is zoned.
I think we can just
we
create
could-
a
We just do
code.
it through
Yeah.
codes. It's all done just through codes, like, so the school has their own code, city has their own
I'm
code.
pretty sure we can make a
Commercial,
new code.
residential, inside, outside.
I think there's too many that we can't do a drive-by and say, this apartment complex, XYZ, they're on a master meter, they need to be switching the system.
Yeah, that's the only question I had, is there a way in our system that we can?
Because I think you either have to do one or all.
Yeah, well, I think every,
You can't do just one.
I was gonna
Not to
ask,
Switch them all.
I was gonna ask Brian, I mean, if we come in and say, if it's a residential home, whether it's
Change the
rented,
ordinance.
owned, or whatever, it's charged the resident rate.
Well, you would need to revise the ordinance and provide just another category for a master meter apartment complex.
when we're
Whatever.
thinking about this, I think to me, that property has to be solely used as living space.
I agree.
So, because there's people right back here that there's a commercial building over here that people have an apartment in, they live in, and I don't think they should get a residential rate in
Because they
that,
live in
because it's used for business as well.
Lower level is business.
Yeah.
upper
So
is-
we revise the ordinance where it says if it's a property is solely residential, then it gets a residential rate.
Have that meter feeds solely residential property. I wouldn't have a problem with that, and I think that's in line with what we were wanting to do. The problem is we had no differentiation between commercial and residential,
When we're
which,
looking-
which was not in line with anywhere else in the state. There was a $5 difference in minimum, that was it. That's why we made the adjustment, was because we weren't acknowledging the difference between commercial or residential at all.
I mean, kind of pushing back a little bit, I think the way you have it currently handled with a master meter with multifamily residential, I would imagine that is normal to be charging commercial rate for. So, I mean, that's just not
And I don't know, how do you find that out?
unusual. I mean, it'd just be.
They should have it
taking a
in the
survey.
system. The utility clerk should be able to find out.
No, I mean, if
I mean, it would
it's
just
a
be-
practice across the industries, or,
It would just be seeing what other
Checking
cities
what
do,
other
right?
municipalities.
But,
I mean,
Because I'll be honest.
because again, that's 25, so yeah, that's not an insignificant amount, but if his rate is, I mean, his bill has gone up $400 a month, I mean, that's a $25 a month addition that he makes to his rent. I mean, for how much time it's been since y'all raised rates, that's not, I mean, that's not out of line with even inflation, probably, from the last time you guys raised the rates, so. It just,
Do you,
gotta
I
be-
mean, do you wanna, and seeking your worldly wisdom, is, do we wanna sit there and say, you know, multifamily, you know, get into actually, you know, single family, multifamily, you know,
Yeah, I mean,
used as a, I guess, as a rental. Would that
Well, and
make it?
I see both.
I agree that if you raise that, you know, the 25 is, you know, is maybe customary, but if we could try to sit there and say that, and I'm seeking, we break the zoning, we break it up to R1,
Because,
you know, all the way
I mean,
up to R4.
but it wasn't, I mean, the rate,
It's-
the rate was just, I mean, again.
But I mean,
it's-
like an R4.
It's been billed the
being more
same way
into
the whole time.
multifamily,
It's only
these
complaining
kind of
because
things,
it was raised, but I mean, that's what you pass. Again, if you want to do something where we can certainly bring an ordinance amending that to provide for, again, have this different category, we can do that. And then you can look at what rate you want to set for a master meter, multifamily, residential property that's classified as commercial. I mean, that's not gonna happen today.
No.
So you can't, we don't have an ordinance ready for that. But if that's the direction you wanna go, we will prepare something for you.
Well, and I understand what you're saying, and I agree. That's part of the problem Dumas has run into is we haven't always, you know, we've always tried to stay in a fair rate for our citizens as far as how much we charge. But in some cases, we've not kept up with inflation on our end to be able to maintain the infrastructure to the level that it needs to be maintained. And so it's a double-edged sword, right? But I don't think that our goal was to charge residential people the same rate as commercial people. That I don't feel like that was our goal. And you know, and I don't disagree with what Brian's saying, and it could very well be a normal circumstance where apartment buildings are charged a commercial rate. I don't know that. I'm not in that industry. The questions we need to ask is, do we want to make that concession on the residential side?
Good.
So I know, I mean, I know this for a fact. There's other units in town that are single metered per unit, scheduled as apartments, that are still being charged residential rates.
Yeah, so if you have your own single meter, you are a residential customer. Once you get more than one dwelling, a residential dwelling on the same meter becomes a company essentially, because I mean, most apartment complexes have offices on site and all the things. And so what the offer was when this was initially discussed was if you want to have that residential rate, you need to get your own individual meters, and that's what was offered to Jasmine Apartments, the Reserve, all of them.
When they came in to complain, okay. And I know, I mean, what Brian's saying, I went and looked at apartments in Lubbock a month ago, 4 different sets, and the water bill was all included, prorated out per unit based on how many tenants were in per each unit. So if you're a single in there, you got XYZ. If you were a husband and wife, you got XYZ, or roommates, whatever the case was. And then if you had a kid, that's your third person, and it's all prorated out for how many people live in there. Which I don't know if you go to that extent, like, you know,
I don't.
versus just saying this bill, that's a portion per unit, and,
No, mine's just based on the monthly rent, and I don't
right.
split it up based on how many people live there, or even, I know like I think it's the Jasmine Apartments over there, maybe, they own the ones over by the Y, and then the ones on First Street too, they own a lot of
Well, the
apartments.
ones on Maddox, they have their own individual meters. The ones on First Street, they are on master meters.
Yeah, and they charge, the ones on Maddox they don't charge for water or anything. I mean, because the tenants,
They have their own individual.
they come and set up their own water meter. The other ones, what they do is they have, like, if you go to them, you say, how much is your rent? They tell you X, whatever it is, say $750 plus $80 utility bill. So they add that on to their rent. So what happens is, for me anyway, I have people living there and I have contracts with them. I can't change it for a while. So it's not just something I can just jump over there and say, you gotta start paying me city bill. It'll take time to make all that happen for me or my tenants. And I'm saying, this ain't gonna affect me whatsoever. They're gonna pay for it, the tenants are. Because, in time, I'm gonna have to raise it. I'm not taking a $5,000 a year cut. So, but I think I owe my tenants for me to come and talk about it, and I still think it's residential people paying commercial prices, however it's classified or categorized or whatever it's called. It's still, these people live in these houses and they're paying the same rates as a real true commercial business.
Is your apartments full? You have all of them rented? So there's 16 units?
Yeah.
We might, with the city attorney, look at is maybe tying this in to residential. If it's zone residential, which it is, I guess, lettered but usually residential goes from, we'll just say, single-family dwellings all the way up to the borderline of you're getting into commercial.
Well, one thing
If
that,
it's in a commercial area, we might be able just to separate that if it's in a residential zoning,
well, one thing that,
then it would be.
that, and like I said, and I don't know what I think right now, as far as what we should do, but there's a lot of things that came up to think about, but one thing that Commissioner Willis has brought up in multiple other situations where we've had similar conversations, not about this particular thing, but he said something earlier that made me think. Some of these apartment complexes have put in the extra money to have individual meters on their property, which costs a certain amount to develop and spend, correct? And some have not. It's a reduction in cost, right, in development. And so in the past, we've thought about that as well as developer costs and what their intention was. And I don't know, like I said, I don't know what the right answer is, but I mean, that's something to consider as well as we have people building apartments or having apartments. And some of this is unintended. I don't think any of us thought about this, Ronnie, and I definitely.
I'm sure you did.
And I definitely appreciate you bringing it to our attention.
I understand that.
And so, and it's a tough thing to make a decision on, because on one side, we all have hearts and compassion, and we don't want to charge people more money, especially people who are already struggling to some extent, right? On the other side of that, we want to make things fair and equitable to developers and to residential versus commercial, people who are making money off their property versus not making money off their property. And, but then the argument comes in with individual house rental, right? And so there's a lot of ways to look at it and try to figure out what's the best process. But then on the other side of that, we also need to make sure that we're always making sure the longevity and the ability of the city to take care of its infrastructure and make sure residents have water and consistent and safe water is there too. So a lot of things to consider and a lot of things I hadn't thought of until today, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Which is why we get paid the big bucks.
Yeah.
And so, but My thought, you guys tell me if y'all disagree, is I think we put, with what we've discussed today, I think everybody knows the kind of things we're considering, but I'd like to know what is standard practice, what's the most common practice in towns our size? As far as how apartments are treated on a commercial level. I'd like to know what would be the impact to the budget if we made this adjustment for all apartments.
Okay, you'd have to.
What would have to take place for us to be able to implement it through our system? Because our billing system has been an issue over the years. And then invite some public comment. See what the citizens think. Maybe put something on our Facebook page asking people what the citizens think about it. Anything y'all would think we should consider? Else? And maybe look at this. We've got 2 weeks, or it'll be 3 weeks before our next meeting. And then have all that information in place and maybe get it to us a little bit ahead of time so we can look over and maybe relook at this in our next city commission meeting. Does that sound?
Maybe have some ordinance changes proposed,
Sample.
That we could actually look at and implement at that time if we thought the best way to go.
This may be getting in the weeds a little bit, but a couple, I don't know how many apartments have swimming pools, which use considerable amount of water. Are they on a separate meter on those swimming pools? I would assume they'd have a bigger, but I don't know. Maybe something else to consider.
Check in.
So, is that something you think you can do in the next 3 weeks?
Yeah, I think we can at least come up with something to entertain and like I said, is a continued discussion, but, advice of the city attorney, what can work and what can't work, and trying to come up with something with the intent of, it's not to put a burden, but there might be, as rates went up in residential and commercial, it is,
There's definitely been
residential
some,
is always attractive.
yeah, there's definitely been some unintended consequences of
Yeah.
the rate increase. I think the rate increase needed to happen on the commercial side, just for longevity and for the city to continue to be able to provide the services we provide. But, there's definitely been some different entities that really weren't on our radar as being affected. That doesn't mean it's right or wrong that we should have or shouldn't have, but I do think it warrants more research. Does that sound fair, Ronnie?
Yeah, that's all I'm asking for. Figure it out, see if it's right or wrong, or if it's balanced, or, I guess my main thing about it is that I don't see the difference between apartment complex that everybody has their own meters and they pay residential rate versus I write the check, saves the city 16 bills. There's something there, it's all the money to the city. I don't see the difference there. That's kind of where my whole deal is there. So.
And I absolutely can see that point of view.
Yeah, I think you can definitely argue it from both sides.
I've argued it in my own head from both sides. I really have. I mean, I really have. I've thought about this a long time because it's.
Yeah, I agree in this situation 100%. If there's cases where they're rent plus utilities and those are adjusted, if we could get into that part.
But the problem is we won't, it's impossible for us to know that.
Yeah.
Like those apartment complexes I went and looked at, I mean, when they talked about your bills, it's rent plus this, and they gave you a variance. Say, water, trash, maybe $30 to $48 a month. Stuff like that. Which tells you they're charging, whether they're making some money, but it's really none of our business.
Yeah, because that's on basically their side.
That's their business model.
Yeah.
And I think it's logistically almost impossible for us to make sure how people are running their business. I mean, I don't think that's something that we have the manpower or the capability to try to figure out everybody's
I think it's
contracts.
outside of our realm,
Yeah.
but it's just.
But it is somebody's household.
But
Wrong, you say.
it's absolutely a different business model than what you're talking about.
Right.
And,
Yours is 100% just
here's
individual
what it is,
residents, and
Yeah.
so,
you're just paying the bill for them.
Yeah. Well, I bought this building, it was already set up this way. One time, it was set up as residential when I first bought it, and then it got changed to commercial. So, I've been on both sides of it. But I paid the bills on both sides too. I paid it when it was residential, and I paid it when it was commercial. It wasn't any difference, it was just the way the billing, the city changed the structure with, Bill Knight was the commissioner, he changed it this way. So, anyway, I know there's a lot to think about.
well, let us do some research and then we'll review it and see where we end up.
Okay, I appreciate y'all, thank you.
Thank you,
sir.
Ronnie.
Thank you.
We'll move on to item number 9. Oh, man, I hate wearing glasses. Consider the approval of ordinance number 1240, zoning change. Javier?
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
So I'm here requested for a ordinance 1240 approval. Back on 1509 South Bliss, Danny Allison, who was also A-Bomb Leasing, bought that property, knocked down that old home that was there, building, whatever you wanted to call it, cleaned it up, and then requested its zone change to J, which is directly to the south across from Zone J. The only thing separating it is an easement, an alley easement. And so we're just looking for ordinance approval.
You want to put
Zoning board approved or disapproved at the zoning board?
The zoning board approved it.
Frankly, y'all already approved it. in
Yes, and y'all-
So that's why we,
What was that, Brian?
you guys already approved the request, but it was not done by ordinance, so that's,
It sounds familiar.
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we approve ordinance number 1240 rezoning the J at this address.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve, before we do that, does there have to be 2 readings for this ordinance change? So this will be our first reading. Okay. It's been moved and seconded that we approve, the ordinance zoning change from H to J as discussed, ordinance number 1240. This is our first reading. All those in favor, raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
I would like to ask though, Javier, if you'd work with Brian and see about that, your model change in the
Yes.
other ordinance.
Yeah, we'll look into the state of Texas and see what we could do.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Item number 10 is consider the approval of contract for assessment and collection services. Shannon?
This is just giving the county permission to collect our sales tax.
This is something we go through every
Yeah,
year.
it appears that it's an every year renewal thing.
The property.
Property tax, not sales
Property
tax.
tax, sorry, not,
I was going here to
Property tax,
look for
sorry.
sales tax. I was like, I thought it was
yeah,
property.
it is property tax, sorry.
Okay.
It doesn't look like it's changed.
Cost is the same.
Cost is the same. yeah.
Parcel's been the same.
Okay.
I'll make the motion to approve the contract for assessment and collection services.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the contract for assessment and collection services with the county as discussed. All those in favor, raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Due to some logistics, we're gonna skip item 11 today. Move on to item number 12. We'll be skipping item 11 and item number 14. Consider approval of bid for pool slide restoration. Tom?
Commissioners, Mr. Mayor. This is just requesting approval for a bid after the RFP process for the restoration of the slides. And the quote is following the agenda packet. It's the only quote I received back. I reached out to Fiberglass Pools of Texas They're out of the DFW area, but they never responded back to me with a bid. And the slide guys, they came in a little early due to some scheduling on their side, and we had to have some work done in order to open for the season. So they discounted this bid $5,200, but unfortunately this is not going to be able to be completed until after our pool season. The slides are safe for use this summer. It's just we're not going to be able to resurface them before the pool opens next month.
So that deduction, that $5,400 or whatever that number is that what our invoice showed from the repairs? Like it's up.
It should. I still haven't received the invoice from that yet.
Because that's cheaper than that one quote you showed me.
Right.
That time and material, it was 7,500 to
Right. Yes.
10,500.
So I think that cost is cheaper than what the invoice is, because we're gonna have to pay for the initial visit and the safety inspection, but then the work done on like the cracks and filling those that's what is discounted from the bid for the full resurface.
When would they actually do the resurface?
It'll be September.
They're gonna have it done by October 1st?
Yes, and it is in that, project must be completed by October 1st, 2025. It is in that bid.
And this is within the scope of our budget for,
We budgeted for it this year, yes, we'll just carry it over.
Make a motion that we approve this proposal from Slide Guys.
I'll second that.
been moved and seconded that we approve the bid from Slide Guys for the refurbishment of the slides at the pool as discussed. All those in favor, raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 13 is to consider the bid for the pool filter media.
Once again, this bid is identical to what you saw, what I provided for you before we went out to RFP. I reached back out to Sunbelt to have them renew it, just to make sure costs hadn't increased, because this is a bid we got during budget process last year, and the bid stayed exactly the same. I reached out to Texas Blue Lake out of Amarillo, and once again, they didn't get back a hold of me for doing the media change on that. So this is the only bid I received after the RFP process.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve Sunbelt Pools for media swap for $55,407.20.
It's moved and seconded that we approve the bid for pool filter media as discussed. All those in favor, raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
So Tom, quick question. So with that budget number, the 145 and
Yes.
change, less those two bids leaves a balance of 26,133. So then less whatever the invoice will be for the cracks.
Correct. Yes.
So is anything scheduled for that other roughly $19,000 or no?
We've got a little bit.
Budget total under 19,000.
Do what now?
Or are we just gonna get to be under budget $19,000?
I kind of doubt it, the way the pool runs. I mean, we have unforeseen stuff coming up. We also do have some repiping that has to get done in the pool room right now. I do not have a bid on that just yet. That's from Ballard to redo one. But most of the major work that we needed to get done this season, excluding these two bids, has been done as far as pool maintenance. And also on that, we do have to have, I think it's going to be right around $5,000 to $7,000 for the tile
How often are we having to replace tile?
every year. And we looked at, we actually tried to go out for a grant when JBS was still doing the Hometown Strong initiative, to try to get that and the plaster done on that, but we didn't receive that grant. And that was the plan, to put it in for this next fiscal year, to get quotes and see what y'all thought during budget time, as far as redoing the tile.
So is the plaster at the end of its life, or nearing the end of its
It
life?
is. We've got a small area in the shallow end on the southeast corner that it's given up on us, and it needs to. The plaster's going to be a big project. We're talking about $500,000 on that. At least those were the costs quite a few years ago, so they might have gone up.
I would probably get a price and bring it at budget,
Yes, absolutely.
so we have an idea.
Yeah.
Will a liner of any kind work?
We can explore those options during budget to see what all our options are, line versus replaster versus
I know
any other processes.
We just finished putting a new liner in at the Y pool.
Right.
That's an indoor pool, so I don't know what.
Yeah, I do believe it is an option. I just don't know how effective it is, in an outdoor situation.
Any other questions for Tom? Thank you, Tom.
Thank you very much.
Any city staff have anything they'd like to discuss with the commission? City manager have anything to report?
Next week, we have, and we'll be notifying the media on the 24th, a strategic planning meeting. So that'll be coming out, notification, but it is one of those excited, staff is leaning forward as we go into the summer season. So we're going to get real busy, and it is hopefully with the idea that we continue through the winter and less stressful through the spring and summer season. So you got a great staff working for you, and just want to thank them. But we got a lot of things coming up, and a lot of things that we've got to get accomplished this summer. So that's all I have.
Anything the commissioners have that they want to discuss?
I don't.
No, sir.
Well, as far as the water goes, we're still working on water wells, and we have kind of located 5 wells that we think will be worth looking at and refurbishing, and we need to check those out, test pump them and that, but we'll go through the full bid process on getting those wells checked and tested. We're also trying to give bids on, and we'll have to go through the bid process probably on the above ground storage tanks, and just make sure they're all up to code and fit state requirements and everything. And on that, we'll probably need to look at some engineering services for this, because you will have to go through TCQ and the state on refurbishing these wells. If you have to re-permit them, or if you have to have them inspected or what, but we'll probably need somebody to go through that process with us, because we don't do it on a normal basis. Other than that, we're continuing to look for new water sources and trying to get some more water in the system, so we don't have any problems during the summer.
And I appreciate you being on top of our water. Commissioner Sims has taken hold of that and really got after it, and I appreciate it. I just ask the citizens that as we come into grass planting and garden planting and flower planting and all the things to make our yards beautiful, which we all love, and we want our town to be beautiful, to be responsible with your water. If you can, water in the nighttime where we have less evaporation. Alternate your days. Try not to puddle water and things. It's one of the most vital resources we have as a city. And while we're working diligently to build up our ability to produce more water, to keep up with a growing city, we still face our challenges with that, and we really need everybody to work together to be as responsible with our water usage as possible, so that we don't have issues and those kind of things this next year. Throughout the summer, we don't know where we're going to be, but citizens' help before we have problems would be a huge. And then I just wanted to wish everybody who celebrates a happy Easter this week, and be safe in your travels and enjoy your family. That's all I had. We don't have any items for executive session, so with that, we will adjourn.